Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the ATOME Energy PLC half-year results investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it received during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we would like to submit the following poll, and if you would give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company will be most grateful. I'd now like to hand over to Chairman Peter Levine. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome to Investor Meet for ATOME. We're very pleased that you can join us today. In the 6 months to the 30th of June, we accomplished in ATOME an awful lot. And to date, in the 9 months now since we effectively first floated the company, we have over-delivered in terms of what we stated were our objectives are when we came to the market. And we expect to continue to over-deliver in the rest of the year and going forward into 2023. What we've done is we've turned promise into concrete achievement. We've turned potential into reality in terms of green energy and green power. And we're now, within a very short period of time, at the forefront of the green energy revolution as far as green hydrogen and ammonia is concerned. We are the only pure play, still, green hydrogen ammonia production company on the market. Now, we've got a lengthy presentation which we've prepared for all our investors. It is on the website. What we're not going to do is going to go through every page and every word. But Olivier, I'm going to introduce now, Olivier is our CEO and will do the presentation, will actually be stressing the highlights, and we would be very pleased to answer any questions that any of you have in terms of where we've come from, what are we doing now, and what are our objectives. So without further ado, I now pass on to my colleague, Olivier Moussat, the CEO.
Thank you, Peter, and Mark, thank you very much. So now we have a presentation on the screen. So as Peter said, it's available on the website. You know the usual disclaimers. And so from an executive summary, well, we are world leading in all senses of the word. We are leading in the market in the London Stock Exchange. And on the project side, we're also leading the race by quite a long shot. Thanks to our fast-track project strategy that we had devised a couple of years ago now, by the power purchase agreement signed and with the front-end engineering design and which is ongoing now. Of course, there is the aspect that we were right earlier on what's going on today in the energy and fertilizer market. The squeeze that we expected to happen in hydrocarbons obviously happened a lot quicker than expected for the very unfortunate reasons that you have all seen with what's going on in Ukraine. As a reminder, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, it's 30% of the world's supply of fertilizers. We are obviously going green now because our first projects are 100% renewable energy, both on the ammonia fertilizer, the energy, and of course on the fuel side. And finally, we are now starting to discuss a little bit more on the pipeline of projects. You know, we say that it's always, Paraguay is the best place to start in the world, and actually we tend to say Paraguay, from Paraguay to the world. But now, how can we replicate what we are doing in other geographies about attracting investors into these new geographies? And looking at new opportunities. From the team's point of view, again, it's a team you now know well, which is complementary. And of course, very importantly, it's a team which is also on the ground, thanks to Jim Spalding's leadership, and Maros as an independent non-exec director, making sure we are always at the forefront of all of the discussions with the regulators, with the engineering firms, with the technical specialists. So indeed, we have grown fast and actually much faster than some of the larger industrial groups, which are only now getting into green ammonia and green hydrogen. So the highlights of what we have done today, as Peter's mentioned, We have done an awful lot, but actually what we started and where we are with H1, we are completely in line with all of the expectations that we have on the financing side and what we said at the outset of the IPO, where we have really, let's say, blown up all of expectation and really went way beyond what we even thought we would be doing, is for some of you who have been here since the IPO, when we listed, we were looking at about 250 megawatts of projects in Paraguay, 100 in Iceland, and now we are looking at a portfolio of over 500 megawatts. Paraguay alone now is more than 400 megawatts. The first project is now 60 megawatts, going very quickly into 120. We have appointed ATOME as our owner's engineer. We have bought the land at Vieta for our first project, and that land is large enough to go into multiples of size of a phase one. We have also appointed Natixis as our financial advisor to structure the financing of Vieta. And for those of you who don't know Natixis, it's one of the largest energy and infrastructure bank in the world, and actually the one involved in most of the capital raising, IPO, and debt facilities of hydrogen funding over the past couple of years. And on the Offtake side, we're doing a lot of work. We continue to do a lot of work there. And also we have entered into MOUs with the Paraguayan Aviation Authority and the Barge Association. So as you know, we are able to ship ammonia worldwide from Paraguay. And also with the third largest fleet of barge in the world, Paraguay is a prime candidate to switch its diesel engine and marine engines into ammonia. And of course, ATOME Mobility, as you know, we have ordered the electrolyzer from CPH2, which is in construction and which will be delivered and installed in Q1 next year. In Iceland, we continue to have the advanced discussion with all of the power suppliers. Just last week, the Icelandic government, through its energy fund, gave a grant of about $175,000 to our green fuel subsidiary, really showing and demonstrating that they believe also in the project and they're ready to support the project. And finally, we are looking at a number of future growth opportunities. Clearly, we cannot give too many details at the present, but one of the strategic upside of us being listed early on was to be visible and to be recognized as an early entrant, to have developers in different regions looking up to us and reaching out to us into taking over the development of a project. So we are looking at Latin America, wider outside of Paraguay, of course, the Mediterranean region. Some of you who follow the news will have seen that Egypt's hydrogen strategy ahead of COP27 is extremely aggressive, with EBRD structuring about a $42 billion program. And finally, Eastern Europe, where you have a number of opportunities arriving. So quite a mouthful in there. Again, the following slides, I will leave to your discretion to read further into details. But where we are and why do we have such a competitive advantage, as a reminder, is we have negotiated access to power which is at present 20 times cheaper than what you can buy in Europe. And even before all of the troubles between Ukraine and Russia, we were already some of the cheapest power in the world and sustainable in the long term. So our competitive advantage has only been magnified. The fact that the demand is here now is absolutely clear. The ammonia market, and I will get into it, is wide, is large, but it's all about being able to provide zero carbon molecules that can be used in light and heavy duty transport, maritime transport, power, agriculture, and also as a way to transport energy globally, the same way that LNG is being used to carry energy globally. So when we go into the hydrogen slide, again, some of you have seen a number of elements. I would also invite you to look at a number of reports which are being published and updated now, including IRENA's new hydrogen report. There will be another hydrogen report, McKinsey report, published in a couple of weeks ahead of COP27. So if you want to educate yourself a little bit further on the investment opportunity that green hydrogen and green ammonia present, I would invite you to look at these reports. And if you remember, you have at present 3 main colors of hydrogen. Gray hydrogen using natural gas, and of course, spewing out a lot of CO2 to produce hydrogen, which is the historic way. Blue hydrogen, which is exactly the same as gray hydrogen, but the added cost and complication of doing carbon capture. And green hydrogen, where you used electricity to split, and renewable electricity to split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen on the other side. We were competitive before when the gas price was over $6 per MMBTU. Clearly, we are now even more competitive. And when it comes to blue hydrogen, as I say, at the moment, it's more costly. You can go into large scale, of course, but you would need a price of carbon of over $150 a ton to make it bankable, whilst we don't need to have any of these, let's call it side mechanisms for us to have the most competitive hydrogen and ammonia on the market. On the ammonia side, I would draw your attention on 2 things. Well, number one, what was in 2019 150 million tons a year global market and globally traded commodity is now over 180 million ton a year. So we're talking as a map from a market point of view, it's over, it used to be over $70 billion market. Now, obviously, we are looking at multiples of that. And the way to look at the ammonia price in the long term, considering that 99% of all ammonia is produced from natural gas, you only need to look at the actual price of gas in the future, whether it's a TTF or Henry Hub. We are, again, in a space where you are now able to ask on the market for over $1,000 a ton for ammonia. All our business models and we would have seen a number of the analyst reports, they're all predicated on using $600 a ton ammonia price. So we have decided to remain on the conservative side just to show the growth opportunity that we have in the project and the long-term viability of our project. If now we're going to go into the Paraguay projects, so a number of you have seen, this is the picture of the Itaipu Dam, the 2nd largest hydroelectric dam in the world. The Paraguay as a country itself, it is BB plus Fitch and S&P rated, which has been confirmed. It is a place where, thanks to its very low cost of electricity and very low cost of fertilizer, has managed to weather the storm of both COVID and the current economic storm extremely well, and has become a prime place for investment. And actually, we keep being surprised by how much incoming we have from a number of Latin American investors trying to understand more about Paraguay and the potential. What we often forget is that Paraguay is not at all a landlocked country with its riverways, which allow it to be the 4th largest exporter of soybean in the world. We're talking about $2 billion a year. But actually, it's also the world's largest exporter of green electricity, selling over $1 billion a year of hydroelectric power to Brazil. And the strategy of the country and the reason we are having such traction, besides the experience that the team has in the country, is also the fact that the country wants to use domestic electrons to create domestic molecules and increase the size of its economy and its competitiveness. It is also part of Mercosur, Mercosur being the free trade agreement between its neighborhood countries, which means that we can produce fertilizer in Paraguay and sell it into Brazil at zero tax, knowing that Brazil is one of the world's largest importer of fertilizer. So the size of the market and the domestic market is huge in itself. But of course, the fact that we have access to the export markets through the Atlantic is an added bonus. Of course, on the transport sector, there is a large potential, which is why we invested in the mobility side. And I mentioned earlier the fact that you have a very large fleet of barges to transport industrial production, which could become a future market on the industrial side. This slide will be new for all of you, and actually this gives more details about the Vieta project, which currently we describe at the 60 megawatt, which we have signed the power purchase agreement with ANDE, the electricity supplier. As a reminder, this is the largest power purchase agreement ever signed by ANDE. And we have already started discussing doubling the size to 120 megawatt. And the discussions are extremely advanced, and we would expect some news flow on this over the next couple of months. The way we are developing it is, as I mentioned, we have appointed ATOME as our owner's engineer. The feed contractor will be announced within the next couple of weeks, actually by early October. And we were pleasantly surprised by the real, let's call them blue chip names on the engineering side, who responded and who are aggressively bidding. And the reason for that, it's because of our state of advancement. You are reading a lot of press around gigawatt projects in Australia or even large projects in Europe. Well, the reality is that when you have to go into very large projects which have to build power capacity, port capacity, transmission capacity, these will take nearly a decade to get until you actually get to production. Whilst our project is literally one of a handful who are going for FID within 2023, and we may actually beat everybody in 2023. We have also appointed an Natixis, as I mentioned earlier, to put together the financial structuring so that we can raise debt for the funding of a project. And we have had a number of discussions with development finance institutions, the IFC and the IDBs, as you would expect them, in order to be prepared as we reach FID in Q1, a final investment decision in Q1 2023. So from the next steps, actually what we call now phase 2, Itaipu Iguazu, 300 megawatt. So if you remember when we did the listing, Vieta didn't exist. And we were talking about Itaipu at 250 megawatt potential. And what we are discussing with Ande today is there will be commissioning next year a 500 megawatt plus substation close to Iguazu, Itaipu Iguazu. And we are now in advanced discussion about a 300 megawatt power allocation, which would then obviously transform into a power purchase agreement over the coming months. At this point, you become the largest in the world by a long shot. So we are pushing these things extremely fast. Again, the advantage of Iguazu as well is you are on the Paraná River, you have access to export market, you are right next door to Brazil. So it is extremely significant, and it really shows the growth that we are going through and also the relationship that we have in the country. Finally, a note on mobility. We have put in here, obviously, it's a reminder of what we have signed with CPH2. The civil engineering is now ongoing. The front-end engineering and design is also ongoing. And you will see from the picture in the middle that actually site work has already started. From an Iceland side, so what you are seeing here is the potential facility at Baki, where on the top right, you have the export ports. So the idea with Iceland remains that phase 1 will be focused towards export of hydrogen and ammonia into Europe, and phase 2 really going into the shipping sector. So, and we put a little bit of a reminder in here of the advantage that green ammonia has as a shipping fuel, and you will see a number of companies are very fast developing engines which can use dual fuels. And Trafigura, who is one of our shareholders, has a partnership with MAN at present to finish the development of MAN's ammonia marine engine, with the intention to put them on stream by 2025, which would be just right around the time we will be able to supply ammonia within Iceland. You would have also seen on the international market that the EU and the US, but now the EU has been pushed also by the US to be much more aggressive, to be a very strong place to sell ammonia to, because the requirements that they have, the demand that they have, has no supply on the other side. So our ability to provide that supply when the demand is not met only enhances our competitiveness. So in this slide, it's a little resume of what we have been saying along with all of the work done by the Green Fuel team in Iceland. And of course, in number 6, we continue to have positive discussions with the government, with the power suppliers, and with the off-takers. And now the government has just granted the Greenfield team a not so insignificant grant. Also wanted to give a bit of highlight of what is our growth strategy, where as we look in other geographies than Paraguay and Iceland. Well, it starts obviously with a high renewables potential, because low cost of electricity is key. 70% of the cost of production of green hydrogen and green ammonia is related to the cost of electricity. Obviously, having limited domestic gas production and existing infrastructure in place, so you don't have to build transmission line, ports, power supply, as I mentioned, and a significant domestic sector, so you can start very quickly supplying to the domestic sector and then grow outside. A question of timeline and outlook, and this is as much to show you the progress we have made, but also all of the announcements you can expect over the next few months. And obviously from the mobility division timeline, from the contractor appointment, the FID the final investment decision point, and then the build out, and from an Itaipu's point of view, when we will expect to have the power purchase agreement signed, which again we expect actually within the next few months. And then we start the build out, and obviously it will be much larger in scale. We will leverage immensely from the work done at the Vieta level to accelerate. But when we go into the Itaipu Iguazu, that will follow Vieta by about a year as far as the construction side. And of course, on the Icelandic side, we are now still in the discussions on the power purchase agreement. And as soon as the PPA is signed, we will go into the FEED processes. And so that's the resume. And for us, what we really want to leave you at the end is that we are scaling up fast, extremely fast. And because of that, we are also getting a lot of credibility from a number of investors and also industrial partners. And to the point that what we are really doing now is make sure that we provide the best value for our shareholders. And that means negotiating on the farming partners, on the investment partners at the asset level, and obviously leveraging all of the work that we have done, rather than signing it too early to an offtake agreement, for example, which wouldn't be as competitive as it could have been, or to engineering agreements where you would leave a lot on the table, right? So for us, we are really looking at it and with the keen eye always to maximize the value that we can give to our shareholders, of which management is a very important part of. We also, as we mentioned earlier, we have very low operating costs, not only because of the price of power, but also on the people side. We obviously work as a very, it's a very lean and mean team, but we are working in jurisdictions in Paraguay where the workforce is also extremely competitive, on top of being very competent. Obviously, when you are managing the second largest hydroelectric in the world, you know what you are doing. So we are building, a very successful track record from Paraguay, and we are leveraging it, which is, why we coined this expression from Paraguay to the world. It's not only about making Paraguay the first exporter or the largest exporter of green electricity in the world. It is going to become the largest exporter of green ammonia in the world. And we are gaining a knowledge and an ability to deploy that business model in other jurisdictions. Peter, if you want the concluding remark?
No, I think that sums it up. Olivier, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Olivia. Peter, thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just put by, the company takes a few moments to review those questions submitted already. I'd like to remind you that the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessible via your Investor Meet company dashboard. Peter, Olivia, I will bring back up your cameras as requested for the Q&A. So there we are. And if I may hand back to Simon. And Simon, if I could ask you just to manage the Q&A, if I could ask you to read out the questions, and obviously the team will give a response as and when it's appropriate to do so. So Simon, if I may hand back to you, sir.
Thanks, Mark. The first question comes from, among others, Stephen. How certain are you that Clean Power Hydrogen will be able to deliver your MFE 220 order on time? In April, they reported they had supplier issues and engineering modifications.
Thanks for that question. And so as you know, you may have noted, ATOME is our owner's engineer and taking care of a lot of the engineering details for ATOME, and able to provide some of the other side. And we are in constant discussion with CPH. And actually, you know, how confident are we? We are extremely confident, right? I mean, every single that we have, every discussions that we have a direct relationship not only with the engineering team and the management, which really gives us, you know, comfort that we are absolutely in the right direction. So we don't have doubt it will be delivered in the first half of next year.
Thanks, Olivier. Question from Steve. When do you expect to announce a decision regarding an offtake agreement at Vieta?
So as I mentioned earlier, I think you would have seen, and you know, in hydrogen, it's become a little bit of a joke. It's the land of MOUs, and you see massive projects with an MOU between, let's say, an industrialist, an offtaker, a management team, a municipality, you name it. And what we are seeing is that, you know, people are committing, but pretty softly. The advantage that we have, and the way we look at things, because we're advancing the project very fast, is that we also recognize from our own experience that the best moment where you can leverage the offtake is when you are at the FID stage, when you know exactly what are you going to be produced, at what time, where can you send it, and we are building in-house capacity as well to be able to negotiate a very, very strong offtake. The important thing is, as I say, it's making sure that we don't leave money on the table, right? It's about managing flows. How do you make sure that your product gets to the best place in the market and that it has the right infrastructure to get there? So getting early, could we get now into a offtake agreement with one of the large trader? Yes, we could. It's been discussed. It's been asked. The reality of what we realize is that this today is not the right time, and over the next few months is not the right time if we want to maximize that value. And it's not necessary either. But as I mentioned, ammonia, it's a global market in the billions of dollars. So finding a market to ammonia, and especially green ammonia, which is in extremely short supply, is not a problem.
Thank you. Next question comes from David. You reference other growth opportunities for the company. Could you expand on this, but would focus on existing significant projects be more preferable in terms of management focus?
So it's a very good point, right? And it's been discussed many times. And this is the advantage of having teams on the ground, people on the ground who are experienced, who know what they are doing, who also have the right level of contacts and discussion, so that we can move things and we can continue moving these projects ahead, and sometimes even faster than what, you know, we think we thought we would. So the way that we are looking at growth is always in partnership with strong local players. Right? Going into new geographies has its own challenges. So in Paraguay, we benefited from the nearly 10 years of experience on the ground from the president team, which was our incubator. So we didn't need local partners there. But as we are going to be looking at other geographies, it's going to be a model of partnership. So we can continue on delivering the very large projects that we have today, and then leveraging on that experience into these new projects, because we will be the only one in the market with that experience, making us more attractive for local partners.
Thanks. Next question comes from Jonathan. Given that water flows are increasingly unreliable, is there a plan or fallback for other green options such as wind or tidal, or would you have to go grey to supply your hydrogen?
So, well, it's a mix of things in this, right? So the way that we have looked at, for example, in our relationship with Ande, it's if you look at Ande, they are exporting anywhere between 2 to 5 gigawatts of power every day back to Brazil. But if when you look at let's call it the low water season, it could go down to about 1 gigawatt of excess capacity. So in the partnership that we have with Ande, and in our business model anyways, is you always want to ask for power, which is easier to give, right? And in the sense that we indeed don't want to be in a situation when the water levels are too low and we have to be curtailed. And that would only happen if you go with, let's say, very unrealistic expectation that you want to go for a gigawatt project, and then you are stuck with a stranded asset for a number of months. It also enables us, and I think this has helped our dialogue by us being reasonable and understanding the challenges of local electricity producers. That has created and enabled us to have deeper discussions, which is how Vieta came about. When they saw that we were very reasonable on the Vieta side, they say, hey, by the way, we just commissioned this new substation right at the heart of your market, right next to all of the fertilizer importers. Would you want that? And you can only do that if you actually respect these issues. And we absolutely don't discount that in the future we could go and we could build our own solar facility in Paraguay or elsewhere. But we have to work before we can run. And clearly, if we want to go for upsizing further our projects, going into renewable generation could be an option.
Thanks, Olivier. Question from Navy. On the offtake agreement, do you expect that for Vieta, the offtaker will serve local demand, or do you think it'll be more skewed towards the export market?
So it's so when it comes to the local demand, our production will, if I look from a global fertilizer point of view, the first phase of Vieta, even 120 megawatt, we will barely make a dent into the local market. Right? So the local market is big enough to take all of our production. The question for us, as any responsible investor, is where we'll get the most bang for our buck. If I have an off-taker in Brazil or in Japan who is offering me 20 or 30% more, we would have to consider it. So we know the local market can take it. That's not a problem. Where would it be? We are in the middle of that analysis, and we will be maturing these discussions very quickly.
Question from Steve. What key milestones should we look for to measure your progress over the near term?
So the next one in a couple of weeks' time will be the announcement of the winner of the front-end engineering and design, which is going to be names that you would expect to see. Followed by that we will obviously start in a couple of months after that looking at ordering some of the kits, some of the electrolyzers, followed by final investment decision, which will then go on. That's just on the Vieta technical side. On the power purchase agreements, in parallel, what you will see is announcement of the confirmation of 120 megawatt Vieta. So automatically Vieta will go from 60 to 120, followed by then the 300 megawatt PPAs, which are currently in discussion. From the Iceland side is going to be more a question about firming up power purchase agreements and power supply agreements. And hopefully, and I touch wood because we cannot talk too much about it, we will be able to make some announcement on development outside of Paraguay and Iceland, which also would be quite significant. Not just about providing a little bit more portfolio effect to the company, but showing where is going to be the next growth of the company is going to come from. As you know, this takes a couple of years to develop, so you need to start now to build on the next pipeline of projects to provide for future growth.
That's great, Simon. Thank you very much indeed for hosting that Q&A, and I think you've taken all the questions from investors this afternoon. If any further questions do come in, we'll obviously make those available to you post today's event. Olivia, Peter, I know investor feedback is important to the company, and I'll shortly redirect those on the call to give you their feedback. But I wondered if I may just hand back to you guys just for a few closing comments, after which, as I say, I'll redirect investors for their thoughts and expectations.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today, and thank you, Olivier, for presenting it. In reality, we have come a long way. We've got a long way to go, and we've achieved a lot. And it's going to be an exciting ride. We're all invigorated by what's happening. We're really charged up, and we've got a lot to prove. We're at the forefront of our industry, and we're going to remain at that. But there is every sign that we will do so. So thank you very much. Keep watching us. Keep looking at our website. Keep looking at our Twitter, and we would be pleased to field any question you've got through our website. If you approach us on our email address, we'd be very happy to communicate with our investors at all relevant times. Thank you very much. and thank you for your interest in our company.
That's great. Olivia, Peter, thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon. Can I please ask investors on this call not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ATOME Energy PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. Good afternoon to you all.